So this is Sutta on the 7 awakening factors. And it begins, when a bhikkhu is accomplished in virtue, composure, understanding, and who has full knowledge and freedom, the sight of them is very helpful. To hear them, to approach them, to respect them, to recollect them, or to take up the training and follow them, that is also very helpful. And why is that? Because after hearing the teaching of such renunciants, a renunciant will live withdrawn in both body and mind. And then it continues, as they recollect and think about that teaching at such a time, a renunciant has obtained or activated the awakening factor of mindfulness. They develop it and perfect it. So just by thinking about that teaching,
you're mindful in the correct sense of that word. Yeah. You're recollected. You're established in the right context. Otherwise, you wouldn't be able to think about the particulars of the teaching.
So now, you meet someone who's understood the Dhamma, and then you reflect on that teaching. I have the awakening factor of mindfulness.
Well,
because I'm thinking about the teaching.
If you are thinking about the actual teaching, in other words, if you understood them correctly, then yes. Not like, so thinking about the Dhamma is not an enlightenment factor. Like thinking about the information you have on Dhamma, that's not the same as understanding the meaning, the core of the Dhamma. And so if you understood the Dhamma, then when you think about it, the enlightenment factors will be brought to fulfillment. But if you haven't understood the Dhamma for yourself, you can think about the Dhamma all you want about it. It won't be on the level of enlightenment factors because it's not on the level of insight. But before we get into discussion, what are the enlightenment factors?
Mindfulness, and then Dhamma Vichaya, investigation into Dhammas. Effort, joy, calm, composure, and equanimity.
Equanimity, yeah.
So that's
the first things, basically. It's and that's kind of the problem with most of the things you read in the suttas. It's that it's been so long ago since they were taught, they were remembered, and the only way to remember those things was through these like linear lists, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, or 4 of this, or 8 of that, or 12 of this, and people then and that's just mere information. That's just pure information. Or there's 7 enlightenment factors to somebody who doesn't have a clue. Somebody who is enlightened, he doesn't even need to. He might not even know about enlightenment factors in that order, in that list, in that particular way the Buddha taught on some occasion. So that's like the important thing to realize if you want to contemplate the enlightenment factors, or if you like Noble Eightfold Path, it's exactly the same thing. It's not 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, as many suttas say. No, it's like the right view and right mindfulness, and then whether it's the right effort through that, it's right because of the right view and the right mindfulness. Whether it's the right speech through that, it's right because of right view and right mindfulness. So it's like this right view comes first, and then mindfulness through that is right, and the direction of your effort is right, or your livelihood is right. But it's not like, I develop the right view, then I go for the second step. It's not a step-by-step arrangement. And neither is 7 enlightenment factors, which is exactly, he goes and hears the wise people, he understands what they teach. So he actually understands. He becomes a sotapanna. He develops the right view. Now, on the basis of that correct view, standpoint, when he thinks about the Dhamma, when he is mindful, those enlightenment factors develop. But not by not having the right view and thinking about the list of enlightenment factors.
Yeah, if I do these things, these 7 things, they will bring
Exactly.
you to
Exactly.
enlightenment.
If I do step by step these 7 steps, it will culminate in complete enlightenment. But I have no clue what that enlightenment is. I have no right view in regard to the escape from suffering and where the practice is. So I'll just basically use the information that I have on the level of lists and collections and steps and methods and instructions, and I'll adhere to it with, like, hopefully that will kind of bring me the result. But as the opening bit you read, it already says, no, first you need to understand. Then these factors will come to fulfillment and development. So without understanding, without a right view, there are no 7 enlightenment factors in you. Doesn't matter how much you think about them.
Yeah.
If, on the other hand, you don't think about them as this methodical list step by step instructions, but actually try to understand the nature, what is correct mindfulness? What is the correct investigations of phenomena? What is the correct effort? What is samadhi? Samadhi comes just before equanimity. Yet here I am believing I can practice samadhi even without a right view. They will somehow result in enlightenment, but as an enlightenment factor is just one towards just before, like, culmination of arahantship, the properly fulfilled samadhi. And there are all these things that I need to develop beforehand. All of that you can infer from reading the sutta. So, have I developed all these things beforehand? Have I truly developed the right view that then makes me correctly mindful, that then makes me correctly thinking about the Dhammas, that then brings the joy and calm and so on? Or am I just fabricating joy or hoping for a calm as a kind of magical result of my method, of my technique, so that I don't have to drill the work and go through the painful process of trying to gain the understanding?
Yeah, so these factors are factors of an awakened person that he's developing. The awakened person is developing these factors.
Yeah, these are factors, again, like many other things mentioned in the suttas, are the factors for somebody who has the right view. So somebody who knows how to get to the end result, how to fully achieve enlightenment, but hasn't done it yet. So these factors are the factors that he should dwell on and contemplate, and they will come to fulfillment if he just follows the direction of his own right view. So the usefulness of why the Buddha listed these 7 factors is for those who have kind of attained to the right view but haven't completed the work. So it's a good reminder to them, look, it's only these things, these are 7 aspects of the same thing that you already have, that you already understood, that already freed you partially. So dwell on these 7 aspects, and they will in return basically bring other aspects to fulfillment.
I remember first coming across it and trying to do these things, and you sitting there meditating, whatever, watching the breath, and then you try and look for those things. I'm making an effort.
Yeah.
I am mindful.
Yeah.
I'm investigating.
Yeah.
I feel quite calm.
Yeah.
I'm happy, and I'm peaceful.
So I'm composed to samadhi.
Look,
I'm very close to nibbana. Where is it?
Yeah, just keep it going, and then.
No, that is sort of the quite like a normal, especially due to the whole like Abhidhamma stuff and commentarial, where the whole Dhamma is presented as just basically a collection of lists and myriad of like information and this and parallels and so on. But none of that is actually the Dhamma. Dhamma begins with the understanding of the principle. If you don't understand the principle of freedom from suffering, like the 4 Noble Truths is just one principle with 4 aspects. If you fully understand it, you understood the 4 facets of one insight. Without that, there is no Dhamma, even if you know all of the suttas by heart and all of the information you've collected. And that's something that people don't necessarily know, because again, you're presented with so much stuff today, and so many different takes. So then you come and read various things, and then you immediately, naturally, sort of try to make sense out of it. But you're not aware that you're actually reading into it. You're not transparent enough. You don't have the right basis. You don't have the gradual training developed. So when you come across this information, you're kind of taking it as information that's being misunderstood for understanding. And most people's understanding is that, just a collection of information. And when they sort of have one information, then they contrast another piece of information, and develop like a greater information and so on, it's a form of understanding, but it's not a form of understanding that pertains on that individual, personal level, internally to be known by the wise, as the Buddha says. So basically the one that pertains to freedom from suffering, for which no amount of information will suffice to free you. Only that insight into Four Noble Truths would. So that's the important thing to realize is, right, so if you don't have the right view, that must be your sole kind of goal, is to develop right view, insight into freedom from suffering, to know for yourself the origin, the suffering, the origin, the cessation, and the path that leads to cessation of suffering. So when that's understood, then within that understanding, you have the right mindfulness, you have the Noble Eightfold Path, you have the 7 enlightenment factors, you have the 4 right strivings, whichever aspect you put, it's within that. And you will know that. Through developing this one insight and state of mind that I have, that I kind of work for, I am developing this. And now if you want to develop it more astutely, more precisely, more efficiently, you then study further the information about the 7 enlightenment factors so that you can apply it correctly within that basis that you have. But if you don't have the basis, it's just a collection of information.
And dangerous in a way.
Very dangerous, because information is just too easy to be misconceived, confused, mistaken for understanding. So like when you have so much information, or like again, I don't want to sound out too much thinking or something, or too much information is bad. It's dangerous because of the wrong attitude underneath, which means whether you have the information or not, the wrong attitude is really what keeps you ignorant. So don't think now that if you are I must not get all this information because it's dangerous. No, your ignorance is dangerous. So you have to always keep perspective in regard to that. I am ignorant and I'm collecting information now. I'm learning about the suttas. I'm not taking anything for granted. I'm taking everything with a pinch of salt until I know for myself the way out of suffering. That's the only criteria. Nothing shorter than Sotapaddi should be a criteria of success. But if you don't have that authentic attitude, then whether you have a little bit of information or a lot of information, well, makes no difference, because you're already obscured by yourself, by being ignorant, by not having that right attitude that pertains to freedom from suffering as the only measure of understanding, not the satisfaction of making the sense out of information and so on.
So I'm reluctant to even talk about to even speak about the
to provide all the information.
7 enlightenment.
Yeah.
I'll just continue as the first one. As they recollect and think about that teaching, at such a time a renunciant with right view has obtained the awakening factor of mindfulness. They develop it and perfect it. And when they investigate, explore, and inquire into their teaching with wisdom, at such a time, they have the awakening factor of Dhamma Vichaya.
Right. So see another aspect of that. See that all the enlightenment factors are kind of peripheral, secondary. When he investigates, the mindfulness gets developed. When he thinks and ponders about that teaching he understood, Dhamma Vichaya, it gets developed. Not he thinks about Dhamma Vichaya, that's how Dhamma Vichaya gets developed. No, he thinks about the Dhamma, ponders on Dhamma, or fortifies his understanding of Dhamma. That effort is the development of Dhamma Vichaya, secondarily.
He doesn't think about Dhamma Vichaya.
Yeah, I'm thinking about Dhamma Vichaya now, and that's Dhamma Vichaya, and I see Dhamma Vichaya being developed. No, it clearly says that. When he does this, mindfulness gets developed. While he's doing this, Dhamma Vichaya gets developed.
Okay, so as he investigates, contemplates the Dhamma with understanding, in this way, his effort is activated and is unshaken. At such a time, a renunciant has activated the awakening factor of effort.
Yes, indirectly, again.
Yeah, striving.
While he's making the effort to clarify what he understood, to fortify, to sustain, to protect that context, everything we talk about, all that he invests in that brings the enlightenment factor of effort to fulfillment. Not, I shall fulfill this effort towards enlightenment or something.
The phenomenon of striving is being developed.
Yeah. So indirectly, that's the point.
Because he's striving.
He's striving towards the goal of freedom from suffering that he understood but hasn't fully fortified. So yeah, the direction of the right view, the understanding that you get through the right view, the effort you're putting into furthering that understanding is the enlightenment factor of effort and striving.
And when he makes such effort, joy arises, and then he's attained that enlightenment factor of joy.
Yeah.
So
joy arises on its own as a result, as a product of his...
As a byproduct, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Not like, I shall be joyful and now let me bring this joy now, because that's another factor that the Buddha talks about. No, follow the direction of the right view. Don't fall from it. Don't neglect it. Don't become negligent or complacent. Joy will arise on account of the effort that you invested in following that direction.
And then when that mind is joyous, the body and mind become calm.
Yeah, unified and calm. So again, that's not something he does. Let me unify this now.
Calm.
No. Let me fulfill that which understood. Let me dwell further on the understanding of the Four Noble Truths. Let me fortify them, and that will calm down your mind, and you will establish samadhi like that. That's the establishment of samadhi. So it's not let me directly attend to this that will concentrate my mind on account of my effort to concentrate my mind. It's completely...
Go in the direction of that right view.
Yeah, go in the direction of the right understanding, the right view, which is the right mindfulness, the correct investigation of phenomena and so on. And that results in composure towards that direction, being fully committed, directed, composed in that one way. And that's one-pointedness, not one-pointedness of your tip of your nose or something. It's one-pointedness of the direction towards freedom from suffering, composed in that one direction. That's like one way only for the one who practices rightly, the Satipatthanas. So no right view, no enlightenment factors, no right view, no samadhi, no right view, no freedom from suffering, no understanding, no wisdom, no equanimity. So if you think you have samadhi and you think you have equanimity and you think you have joy, without the right view, knowing that you don't have the right view, take them with a pinch of salt. Recognize that they might not be the correct samadhi and correct equanimity because there is no right view. So it's not to say, there is no samadhi at all, there's no form of samadhi at all, but it's important to recognize that the wrong samadhi, mistaken to be the right samadhi, cannot magically become the right samadhi. Only fully abandoning that the samadhi of the wrong kind that you have, the equanimity and peace of the wrong kind that you have, fully abandoning it in order to get the right view through exposure of that recognition towards suffering and so on. That's how you can get then the right samadhi. Because sometimes people might think, I know my samadhi is not right, but if I keep investing any effort in this wrong samadhi, it will become right. No. Right samadhi is the result of right view and correctly directed mind. Right samadhi is not the result of repairing the wrong samadhi. That's already the wrong view, thinking you can directly attend to your samadhi as a form of concentration that will then result in some liberation. See, you don't concentrate your mind there towards your own concentration and develop your samadhi through focusing and so on. You develop samadhi by following the right view, which is sort of guided by the right mindfulness and correct investigation of the factors and joy and calm and effort. And that becomes a unification of the mind. So it's equally secondary, the right samadhi. It's indirect. It's basically peripheral from where you are making your effort towards understanding freedom from suffering.
It reminds me of another. It's this little section is found in Majjhima Nikaya 117. These three states run and circle around each other. Right view, right effort.
Right.
These three states run and circle around right view. Right view, right effort, and right mindfulness.
Right mindfulness, yeah.
They just effort.
So it's always those three. If you have the right view, means there is a degree of right effort. And there certainly means there is a degree of right mindfulness. If you have right mindfulness, the right view is there, and right effort is there. If you have right effort, the right view is brought back, and the right mindfulness is there. So that's what I mean, they're not linear. And if you try to understand them on the level of that linear information, you will fail, because they cannot be attended to directly and be understood in their nature. You can attend information directly. Okay, there is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. But what does that information pertain to? Well, pertains to understanding freedom from suffering. What suffering? Well, suffering that I'm liable here and now. So instead of me making the effort to sort of draw connections and parallels that nobody else thought of, and somehow get a magical insight on account of it between these 7 factors, let me dwell on the level of my liability to suffering, endure it, not try to get rid of it or manage it, which is why you always try to jump and pounce on the information hoping it will bring you freedom, because you want to get rid of the liability that is painful. So the efforts to understand the Dhamma, if they're directed towards basically manipulating and sort of drawing parallels between information that you collected about the Dhamma, it's just going to become another form of management of your liability to suffering, not the uprooting of it. So yes, you need the information, you need to be told what to do, but if you refuse to allow yourself basically to come back onto the level that it matters, where that applies, you're just going to stay on the level of playing with information for the rest of your life, because you refuse to give up the attitude of trying to manage your liability to suffering by understanding information. And that's psychotherapy, that's psychology, that's any kind of worldly way of dealing with suffering and pain. It's all on the level of management. So it's only relatively efficient. So if you learn the 7 factors, you learn the 4 Noble Truths, you learn the gradual training, you have more information than you need. As we said before, back in the Buddha's day, there were no sutta collections. All the information we have now on account of the Nikayas, like monks did not have access to that. Only Ananda was remembered all of it. Most of the monks didn't. And probably vast majority of them knew maybe one story with one instruction. And that was enough for enlightenment. Why? Well, because they did the work. So if you know the 4 Noble Truths, you know the gradual training most importantly, you know what comes first, virtue, sense restraint, guarding of the sense doors, you have all the information you need. Now you have to start doing that which that information tells you. And that's the catch. People don't do it. Even when they take on the virtue, take on the gradual training, they kind of still keep it on the level of performing the instruction gain on the level of information. Because they don't want to endure the dukkha on that right level, that liability to suffering. They don't want to feel it without immediately trying to manage it, because it's too unpleasant. If you just give up the management and just stay under that pressure of that unresolved liability to suffering on the deepest existential level. But you have to, basically. If the right view were to sort of take the root and start to grow, it can only do on that basis. That's what Buddha said. If somebody, he teaches only 2 things, suffering and freedom from it. So if somebody correctly understands the nature of dukkha, there are only 2 outcomes of that. Either mental derangement or noble search. As in, this, if they don't lose their mind on account of the recognition of that correct pain of liability to suffering, that existential dread, if they don't lose the mind on account of it, then they will have no other choice but to try and correctly uproot it and seek the correct information, they will then sort of, be the basis for them making the right effort and enduring things on the right level. So it comes down to that, enduring things on the right level. If you endure things on the level of that existential dukkha without trying to manage it, get rid of it, distract yourself from it, then the whole basis for the right view and everything else that comes from it is being developed. So that's that fundamental difference between information and understanding of it. It's two opposite directions. So information gives you something that needs to be understood, but only your effort to understand can bring that understanding, not more information. More information cannot accidentally result in understanding. Only your effort to understand. So yeah, most of the monks didn't have 99% of the suttas that we have today. And in a way, see, that was good. Their minds were less cluttered with so many information. And then with that natural tendency to draw parallels between information instead of understanding each and everyone individually on that personal basis. So it's like when a person reads about Namarupa and then reads about the five aggregates and then tries to understand how Namarupa relates to five aggregates, and drawing parallels between develops the belief that, oh, see, I understood this now because look, I found the common ground, the connection. Yeah. And that's just a connection of further information. If you were truly authentic the way I'm talking about, if you endure the suffering on the right level, Namarupa or the five aggregates or the six sense bases, doesn't matter which one, needs to be understood within itself on the personal basis. So you need to understand Namarupa to the extent that it frees you from suffering, or at least offers a direction of freedom from suffering. Or you need to understand the five aggregates to the extent that frees you from suffering, or Salayatana to the extent that frees you from suffering. Not, Namarupa relates to the five aggregates, which is all on the basis of all of that came much later when people have all this information and fell away from that personal basis of recognition of their own liability to suffer. So then it's just too easy to start conflating information and connection between information with like greater understanding. And then got even worse. People started studying Pali scholastically and then learning the etymology of the informational term, developed the belief that you understood it. But if you truly understood Vijnana, for example, you'll be an arahant. Because the Buddha said, complete understanding of Vijnana means arahantship. So all of that, it doesn't matter how much information you have and how dependent you became on that information, all of that can be cleaned away, like in one sweep of just re-establishing yourself if you're brave enough and strong enough to endure it on the level of I am still liable to sickness, aging, death, anxiety, dread, suffering. I know no escape from it internally. I am not able to not move when these things present themselves, which is why I always try to avoid those things from presenting themselves. I always try to cover up when they're present, with the possibility of their presence. I always try to ignore and distract myself from it. So if you abandon these attitudes and endure these things on the right level, even the little information you collected will start slotting itself in the right place. Because now you got the basis. That's why the two factors for the right view, it's yes, correct information, utterance of another, and yoniso manasikara. The peripheral attention base is properly developed. Without it, there is no right view. Even if you listen to the Buddha himself giving information.